Hello and welcome to Popcorn Parenting, the podcast about movies, mythology and the Messiah. My name is James Cary, I'm a writer, I live in the UK, and my very British friend Nate Morgan Locke, who lives in America, is with me now. Hello Nate.
Hi James, and a Merry Christmas to you.
And a Happy New Year. We are here because a movie has just dropped and we are going to talk about it. It is the movie Soul, and I say we have pretty mixed feelings about it. They're actually not that mixed,
They're
really.
not very mixed, no. They're quite a singular, really, sadly.
So this is the new Pixar movie that just arrived on the Disney Plus app because essentially, even though it cost $150 million, here are the cold hard facts. They couldn't really release it because there was this pandemic. I don't know if you saw that in the papers. Yeah. And so the box office is technically only 7.6 million. It's on the app. I watched it. Nate watched it. You may have seen it. It is a movie by Pete Docter, who essentially, presumably, has been so successful for Pixar, having done Inside Out, that he has basically been allowed to do whatever he wants, and it seems like he decided to do this. And he wrote it with a guy called Mike Jones and someone called Kemp Powers, which is a real name for a human being, apparently. And it stars the vocal stylings of Jamie Foxx, Tina Fey, Graham Norton for some reason, and Rachel House, and Alice Braga and Richard Ayoade. As you can tell, we weren't that thrilled about it. But Nate, why don't you set us up with some Inner World?
Yeah, I'll do the Inner World. I must say, the thing for me is that I was just excited about this film and I was disappointed. So in some ways, it was an ideal 2020 conclusion, really. But Inner World, let's do Inner World. And before I do this, I should say that there are going to be a complete spoilers. We're going to go into absolutely everything that happens in the film, including the ending. So if you haven't seen the film and you're desperate to watch it before you listen to our expert analysis, then you could stop now and go and watch it. But you don't really need to. In fact, that's one of the main conclusions, is that there are much better ways of tackling these subjects than watching this film.
And other movies. And just for, again, a bit of context is I sat down, I like Nate, was full of excitement because for me, it was about jazz and a guy who could play jazz, and there is very, very little of it in the movie. So I sat down to watch it with my wife before showing it to my kids because I thought I'd better check it out first. And so after half an hour, we switched it off. Because my wife wasn't enjoying it. I wasn't enjoying it so much that I was minded to make her watch it. So we watched The Crown instead, which was also quite sad. But then I went back to it, but with no great joy, really. So in a way, I don't think any of us are thinking, and one of my main reflections on it from a plot point of view, rather than a spiritual point of view, is that the movie is entirely predictable. So in a way, we are giving you spoilers, but we're not really spoiling anything because you're not going to be surprised by any single moment of this movie. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I should say I was so excited about watching it that I almost started it at 1 minute past midnight on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, because I thought people are going to want to talk about this, and so I need to sort of have got in there and watched it.
And they are going to want to talk about it, and they're all going to say how good it is. Everyone said how good it is.
Well, lots of people online did, but I've had lots of messages in the last couple of days of people just saying, "Ugh, Pete Docter, what was that? I was so disappointed. Weren't you let down? We watched it and we didn't like it very much." But
okay,
anyway, in a world which is our world, because this is set in Manhattan, and there is a jazz musician and grade school band teacher named Joe Gardner, and he's been waiting for his big break for his whole career. and he's played in all sorts of jazz bands, and he goes down to this nice little jazz club because there's an opportunity to play with Dorothea Williams and her quartet. And so he has this opportunity to go and audition, and he goes and auditions in this great groovy little jazz club, which I'm guessing is based on one in Bleecker Street in New York, if you've ever been down there. But nonetheless, he does the audition, he gets carried away into the music, he has a wonderful time, and they say, okay, buddy, big shot, come back this evening and you can make it. And so he's absolutely overjoyed, he's wandering around, all sorts of stuff, when suddenly he falls down a manhole and finds himself on an escalator to the great beyond. So he's dead, or nearly dead, or whatever. And so he's going up this escalator with all these other people from all around the globe who've died at exactly the same time. But he doesn't want to die because he's got a jazz gig to get to. It's very inconvenient for him at this particular point in his life to die.
Yeah, he's the only person to have been inconvenienced by his death. This apparently has never happened before in this scenario.
Everyone else is just like, yeah, it was definitely time to go. And he's like, no, I can't die. I've got jazz to play.
Yeah.
So he tries to sort of get back down and sort something out, but somehow falls off the escalator and falls down into not HE double hockey sticks, but into the great before, which is where the movie really starts to show some level of creative endeavor and engagement. And at this point, he is confused for I feel like some Scandinavian Nobel Peace Prize winner. And he's corralled in to mentor 22, who is a pre-incarnate soul who is being prepared for life on Earth. And she is a bit of a troublesome soul because she's the 22nd soul to ever exist, which is why she's called 22, which raises questions about early genealogies and Genesis. Anyway, she's had all of the great mentors in the past, Mother Teresa, Gandhi, Abraham Lincoln, I think Carl Jung, and everyone sort of tries things out, Muhammad Ali, and they've all failed to convince her that life is worth living. But maybe Joe Gardner, our 40-something jazz pianist, will succeed where others have failed. So anyway, as you said, the film is entirely predictable. And interestingly, as we sat down to watch it, my wife grabbed a piece of paper and a pencil, and she said, I'm going to write down what I think happens.
Oh.
And then I said, hold on, give me a piece of paper too. So we're both sitting on the sofa with these little pieces of paper, writing down what we expected to happen. And I'll say, yes, we were right. But also, I'd written a better ending.
Oh.
Which I don't think was hard. But
okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about the one thing that I kind of wanted to talk about, because in a way, the movie is more about the pre-life than the afterlife, I think, because that I see from the notes from the Wikipedia article that Docter pitched an idea set in a place beyond space and time where souls are given their personalities. So in a way, he couldn't really get there without getting to the great beyond. So this is the great before, as it were. But actually, you sort of end up with this very strange and nebulous afterlife, which weirdly made me yearn for some kind of. I was actually yearning for a multi-faith afterlife rather than a zero post-religion afterlife.
Yes.
So it was so inoffensive and non-specific and bland that it was. I just thought it was a really hard watch in that sense because it was so sort of gloopy and psychobabbly.
Yeah.
So I wasn't expecting, and it's worth saying there's good evidence to say that Pete Docter is a Christian, identifies as a Christian, and during an interview in 2009, he confirmed that he's a Christian. And in a way, I'm not expecting a Christian to do a Christian afterlife. That's not the deal. That's not how storytelling works. but I just found it quite hard that it was so nebulous and bland and squishy,
Yeah.
but at the same time very imprecise, so that there was this kind of like, oh, a soul's jumped off the conveyor belt. Oh, that's never happened before, hasn't it? And nobody seems that bothered. There aren't really any alarms going off. Somebody kind of chases it down. And then there's a thing at the very end where, oh, we're going to make an exception just for you. And you go, okay, you've not really set up that as a thing. And I'm just aware that Pixar have raised the bar so high on storytelling that they've sort of smacked their face in the bar this time. It's a bit like critiquing Paul McCartney for Wings.
Yeah.
Wings are one of the most successful bands that in human history. And yet they only seem lame because Paul McCartney was also in the Beatles. So I'm aware that just sort of critting Paul McCartney.
Yeah, and I'm totally with you on that. And I think it's where Pixar, as you say, raised the bar. They've told us how storytelling, well, they've shown us what you can do with storytelling, right? And they've shown us, and that's the key thing. It was show, not tell. This film is almost entirely exposition. It's people constantly telling you what the rules of this new kind of setup are, the great beyond, the great before. And one of the ultimate ironies is that it's apparently about the formation of personality, right? Joe Gardner has no personality. Yeah. He is about the blandest character you can imagine. He's a teacher and a jazz musician. That's not a personality. That's a job and
that's
a hobby,
situation,
right?
Yeah.
So you sort of go show us what his personality is like by putting obstacles in front of him, and let's see. But the only thing that drives him is the inconvenience of not being able to go and play some jazz music, and then his sort of vague kind of revelation that maybe seeds and lollipops are nice and pizza tastes good. So you just sort of think, well, we've seen you do personality so well before, Pixar, not least in Inside Out, and as a kind of whole treatise on what personality is. But then this is just really bland. 22 doesn't have a personality either.
Yeah, this is the guy. For reference, this is the guy. Pete Docter is the guy who did the story with Andrew Stanton of Wall-E.
Yeah.
Which is just a jaw-dropping, you could retire now, that movie is so good.
Yeah.
And go back and listen to that episode where we just really wax lyrical about how brilliant a story that is. And so, he's got, and he's also the director and the original story guy of Monsters, Inc. and Toy Story 2.
Yeah.
Which I often describe as the perfect movie. He's one of 4 people on that.
Yeah.
So he kind of knows how it's done. He's done it. He's seen it done. And so this really boring opening, it's a movie. It's a movie about jazz. He's a middle school teacher. And I know it's meant to feel inspiring that it's humble, but he's noble. And he's got this, but you're right. There's no personality, but the first 20 minutes are boring.
Oh, they're really boring. And in fact, well, the line I've been going with this is not a kids' movie. It's a TED Talk, right?
Right.
And there are 2 major things with that. One is that kids don't want to watch TED Talks, and that TED Talks were interesting about 10 years ago.
Yeah, and there's only about 10 good TED Talks anyway.
So it's just so you're being taught a lesson that Pixar wants to teach you from the very opening scene. A lesson about how wonderful life is and how amazing creation is and how we should enjoy every moment and experience all the things that life can offer us. And it's all valuable and meaningful and good. And it's teaching you that from the very beginning and doesn't let up. And there's no sense in which Joe Gardner is actually an inspiring teacher.
Yeah.
Because we've seen the inspiring teacher movies before, right?
My Captain.
Yeah, the teacher goes in. The kids are disaffected. They try some unconventional methods. They rage against the administrative, powers of the school. And eventually the kids come round to their way of thinking. Whereas in this, there are some very nice kids who aren't very good at playing jazz and who aren't especially interested in playing jazz. And he says, hey, kids, here we go. Jazz is amazing. Wouldn't you like
Yeah.
to be great jazz musicians? And they're all like, well, maybe.
Yeah.
You're like, but that's not a thing to engage with. What would be better, far better as an opening scene, is to have him being the jazz musician, trying to enthuse and inspire this group of children, and they're all obnoxious, and he throws a hissy fit and gets really angry and cross with them and is about to be fired, but the teacher says, well, actually, you're the only person we can have for this, so you've got to stay on this job, and we're going to give you the medical, we're going to give you the insurance coverage and all that sort of stuff. It's a guaranteed job. Now, this is a guy who hates his job, who hates these ungrateful kids, and maybe one day he'll come round to have a change of heart because he's seen something beautiful. Whereas he doesn't change. There's no character development. He wanted to play jazz music. He didn't get to play jazz music. Oh, he does get to play jazz music. Oh, it's a bit disappointing. But hey, life's amazing anyway. It's like, this is such a poor film. And I can't understand why Pixar made this mistake in storytelling, which is their thing.
Yeah.
And the one aspect of the film which people have talked about and said, you know, this is kind of landmark, is the fact that it's the first African-American lead in a Pixar movie, because Joe Gardner is a black guy.
Right.
So people might be able to say, well, it's so woke, you see, it's trying to force this thing on you.
Yeah.
But it isn't. That's not the problem with the film. It's not saying to you, hey, look, cultures are all interesting and amazing, and you should care about black lives and black lives. It's not doing that.
Yeah.
It's just there. It's like, oh, this is such a waste of time. It's like, and such a disappointment, because the topic, the idea of the body and soul, the dichotomy, the relationship, what is a human being anyway?
Yeah.
And
I mean, there was an interesting idea also that your passion is not necessarily your purpose.
Yeah.
But that's a very deep and philosophical thing to untangle, should you be minded to, which I don't necessarily think that's a very worthwhile endeavor, especially in a kids movie about jazz.
Yeah.
But it's not about jazz, but then you know, what is it about? I mean, we should talk about it. So let's talk about that. So what is the movie really about? Because you've been brooding on this for some time now, and so far we've basically kicked it apart technically, which I think is entirely justified, but some people don't care, and that's fine, because some people like the movie. And it was only actually rewatching with my kids over Christmas The Italian Job, having seen it many times before, that I noticed that there is no character development whatsoever. It is merely a movie in which Michael Caine shouts at people, and
which
he's not
isn't
trying
a bad movie in it of itself, just having
He's not-
Michael
yeah.
Caine shouting at people.
But it's a bizarre movie because it's like he's not trying to prove anything to anyone. He's trying to steal some money, and he sort of does. And then there's literally a cliffhanger ending, and that's it. It's really puzzling. It's like missing Act 1 and Act 3.
Yeah.
It's just a heist.
In terms of what, we've sort of kicked the plot to death and raised against the character development or lack of. But in terms of what this film is about, this is about the gospel, in inverted commas, the good news of creation. So basically, Pixar have done it before, and they've done it far better before, as we mentioned WALL-E already. In some ways, they do it better in Ratatouille, which I know you're not a big fan of. But,
Nah.
but in Ratatouille, he says, hey, food's amazing. It tastes great. If you have cheese and then you have grapes, which is obviously code for wine, right? You put those two things together, it's really nice.
Yeah.
And we go, food's great, isn't it? It's brilliant. And you start to sound like that guy off the Fast Show. Do you remember?
Isn't it brilliant?
In Milk, brilliant.
Yeah.
You know,
Fantastic. Yeah.
brilliant. I love Milk. And that's basically what this film is. The film is trying to convince you that the world around us is amazing, and that it is sufficiently amazing that that's all that we need to do, is acknowledge how awesome the world is, and look at seeds and go, wow, seeds are brilliant, aren't they? I love seeds. And then we look at pizza and we go, I like pizza. It tastes lovely. So that's amazing. Just remember that pizza's amazing. And then, like air, when it's blowing, it feels sort of funny, doesn't it? Air. I'm going to Stuart Lee now, but
Yeah.
air's brilliant, isn't it? It just blows in your face, and you look at my face. It's all been blown on by the wind.
But you could summarize all that with "Smell the roses."
Yeah, but the great irony is, kids already know this.
Yeah.
Kids are experts on knowing that jumping in muddy puddles is fun to do. That running around in the woods and climbing trees and throwing stuff and giggling is great fun. And that's what they do. They sort of do it all the time. And so for Pixar...
Kids don't need to know that. It's adults need to know that. And that's why this movie is not really for kids.
And it's why it's a kind of frustrating that Pixar will go, we've made a film for probably slightly insipid and uninspired 40-year-olds.
Yeah.
To feel better about taking up a new hobby or going for a walk. And I think...
Well, okay, let's be kind on that. I happened to go on Twitter last night and not looking for this. I was just putting up a tweet about a blog post I wrote about how to be a better writer, which is on my Sitcom Geek blog. And goodness me, Twitter was a very, very unhappy place last night. It really affected me because it was like I was popping into Twitter to pick up a coat and walk out, and I didn't want to stay, and I didn't stay.
Yeah.
But that sheer moment of being in there, because you can't go into somewhere with your eyes shut, pick something up and leave. You kind of have to look to see where you're going, and it was just full of rage and despair. And you think, actually, a movie which tells people who are full of rage and despair, who live in places like New York City and are angry about race relations as well as COVID and Republicans and everything else.
Yeah.
Well, maybe this is the people do like that do need to be told. So you need to have a purpose, not a passion, and you should smell the roses.
But they can watch WALL-E and get that far better. They've already done. You've already got WALL-E.
Yeah, and It's a Wonderful Life.
And It's a Wonderful Life.
And Up.
And Up does a better job of it. And even Ratatouille, if you've watched all of those and run out of it, to see something which isn't just a kind of lesson. Hi, kids. Welcome to assembly this morning. Nice Mr. Pete Docter is going to tell you all what's important in life. And you just go, I don't want to watch that. I want to see an exciting story, to forget about those things for a while, and then to come out of the film going, I enjoy living. Like, life is great. And there's some bits about it which don't make a lot of sense and I need to get some resolution on, which this film doesn't give you at all.
No.
Because the mega problem with Pixar saying, in creation, brilliant, is that they're stuck at Genesis 1 and 2. They have nothing... Well, this film, certainly, Inside Out and other films do it much better. Nothing to say about Genesis 3 onward. So, and there you go, Onward. That did a better job of tackling the challenge of life and, appreciating what you have and all that sort of stuff. And stuck by its own rules, because it wasn't like at the end of Onward, they just went, do you know what, we've got some more magic. So your dad can actually come back to life forever now. Because,
you behaved so well. You've done so well.
Well done.
This whole thing was a test.
Really well behaved, and so you're going to get... So death doesn't exist anymore. It's like, well, okay, someone behaved really well, but it certainly wasn't us, and it certainly wasn't Joe Gardner. Here's another thing I should point out about the expositional, in-your-face, on-the-nose assembly approach to this, is that after he's played his wonderful gig of a lifetime, he comes out, and we all know that it wasn't all that. It wasn't what he'd hoped it'd be. He's feeling disappointed. And he's sort of just a breath on the sidewalk outside the jazz club. He could have looked, said thank you to everyone, got in the taxi. He could have gone back to his house. He could have sat down.
It could have been the Charlie Brown after the spelling bee moment.
Exactly. We all knew at this point that it hadn't gone the way that he'd hoped, and he was feeling like he'd missed. Happiness was elusive, and he couldn't really get there. And then he says, "Oh, that wasn't what I'd hoped it'd be." And then Dorothea Williams, or the lady playing her anyway, she says, "Oh, I heard a story about a fish once, and he said to his other fish friend, 'I want to go and experience the ocean.' And the other fish friend said, 'Well, we're already in water, aren't we? We're in the ocean.' And the first fish says, 'This is just water. I want the ocean.' Anyway, good night."
And at that moment, they all sat down to watch Finding Nemo and had a really good time.
What was the point of the entire film? Let's just do that one. Let's literally just do that. Instead of saying, can I tell you something I would use as a school assembly? Fish and water and oceans. And then it's like, stop telling us, show us. You're so good at this. Why have you failed to do it so much?
Okay, so we've got the gospel of creation, as it were, but it stops at creation, and we get the little helicopters that fall down from the whatever they are from the trees,
the seed things,
the seed, and that's all great.
Yeah.
So in a way, there is life affirmingness there. What's another theme that we can be looking out for? Should we be minded to subject our children to this movie?
Well, so and this is the reason I really wanted to watch it, was because the subject matter is about the metaphysical existence of human beings. So what's a person made of, right? What is a James Cary, right? Is he just a body, or is he a body and a soul? Or is he a body and a soul and a spirit? Is he a body, soul, spirit and a mind? Is he, like, what bits make a person and make a human being? And this is called Soul, and it was obvious from the trailers and all the marketing to start with that it was going to be addressing the questions of the body-soul relationship. Can you be, how does personality get formed? Fascinating subject to make a film about. And so that was what was going to be exciting, because we're immediately then into big, deep questions about life. And so in the very act of watching the film, we're bringing up for our kids questions about meaning and value and existence and God and life and death. So that was the reason I was so excited to see it, because I thought Pixar could do this really well. And obviously we've discussed the fact that they didn't really do it.
And actually, can I just say, 22. So in a way, they both learn something.
Yeah.
22 is basically a bag of 21st century anxiety issues.
Yes.
So in a way, they overcome this, but it's nothing to do with their soul. It is entirely to do with self-confidence, being told you're a failure, and believing people and all that kind of stuff. So it's about self-esteem. There's nothing. Yeah. That's about personality. There's nothing soul-related about that.
And very interesting. What you would call the kind of the major turning point after he's played in the jazz club, he looks out at all the little objects and created things that 22 was playing with, and he determines to go back into the great before, which doesn't make any sense anyway, and to take with him one of these objects, and he confronts 22. He comes to console 22, who has become a lost soul because she's sort of wrapped up in herself. And she's hearing all of the mentors from her past criticizing her for not paying attention and for being basically unteachable. And she's saying to herself as a mantra, "I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. And you just think, this is where your doctrine of man, your understanding of what a human being is so pathetic, because the only option you can go to is self-esteem. She has low self-esteem because all these teachers have been mean to her. The possibility that she might repent of being a brat, of being awful to all these wonderful teachers, of sort of say sorry for her kind of ingratitude, and try to find someone to ask forgiveness from, to be redeemed in some sense, was really disappointing. So when he comes in and sort of says, "Hey, go on, you go for it, girl," and gives her the seed, and off she's going to go, you think, well, that's where, if your understanding of the human person, whether you think they're body, soul, spirit, mind, whatever combination of those things, if it doesn't take sin seriously, if it doesn't understand that we're curved in on ourselves and that's a problem, then it doesn't really have any hope of being tangible enough for us to relate to, for us to actually connect to. And so the fact that there's no sin in Soul, it's misunderstandings, and Terry, who's the bean counter in charge of death, Rachel House, she's just trying to get her job done, and she's just a little bit mean.
Yeah.
And so, well, we can distract her, and then we'll get you back down to earth. So the problem for this film is that in its understanding of anthropology, its understanding of human beings, it doesn't really have a category for sin, and for anyone to need to say sorry. And yet, in other Pixar films, there's been a much more robust understanding of sort of human selfishness. Now, saying that, Richard Ayoade as Jerry, playing type, as Rachel House does. In fact, her character, Terry, is exactly the same one she plays in Hunt for the Wilder People and Thor Ragnarok, if you're interested. But Richard Ayoade, when they're talking about pushing different sort of pre-incarnate souls into personality booths or whatever it is, there's a reference to you five go off to self-absorption. And he says, Richard Ayoade's Jerry says something like, haven't we been sending rather a few too many people off that way? And you think, one throwaway line that people are a bit self-absorbed, and yet a film which says, no, they're not really. It's not enough. It's not enough to actually make sense of human beings as we find them to be.
Right.
So I think that's where the doctrine of man, it really falls down, because it doesn't have a category for sin, and then doesn't stick to its own rules at the end by having Joe die. If Joe had died, if he'd got on that the escalator again,
Yeah.
gone into the great beyond, and that had been the end of the movie, that would have been far better. It would have improved the movie by about 50%, because at least we would have gone, oh, so at least you're playing by your own rules within the film. And then the other big question,
or they could have said, oh, great. Well, or another one is you're not going back because that's not allowed, but we've got another one for you to mentor, 3,228.
Yes.
Oh, you're going to love them.
Yeah.
Gets out a catapult straight in the eye.
And the other thing I wanted to see, although they didn't do it, was, so in from a sort of a theological perspective, the question about where does the soul come from? So if you get your physical bit of you from your mom and dad, then when do you get your soul? Is your soul like a bit of a cut off from your mom and a cut off from your dad, and that makes you? Or does God create a new soul in the very moment that you're conceived? And generally that's the way that sort of Reformed thinking would go, to say that your soul is created by God individually at the point of conception. So what I wanted, what I thought would have been brilliant, and it would have only taken one shot, was when 22 finally does, jump out of the great before, to show her coming to life, as it were, to just basically have her mum and dad just having a cuddle and just be like, now she exists. Now she's a human being, and she's a full human being made in the image of God with body and soul right there and then at the point of conception.
Right.
Otherwise, you've got to pick another point at which someone becomes a human being, in which it's almost impossible to pick anything else other than the point of conception.
Yeah, but that's got a whole lot of other baggage with it.
But think how much more powerful that this film would have been if they even just made a decision on that, rather than just sort of going, oh, she's jumped off the edge, off she goes, down to earth, bye, bye. Okay, guys, let's do some tidying up. It's like, no, I want to see what you're actually saying about the human being, about what a person is, and when they become themselves. And in that way, you think, well, yes, that's a cop-out.
So let's wrap this up by talking about if you want to watch this with your kids, what are some questions you could talk about? And B, if you don't, what else could you watch, which would actually talk about these questions more effectively?
Yeah. I think in terms of Bible passages and other related stories or topics, I think the ones that we talked about in terms of A Christmas Carol, Muppets Christmas Carol, in the first part of the Christmas special, are basically the same again. So this is a film about the intermediate state. Okay, so once you've died and you've not yet been resurrected in the new creation, where are you? And what is it that you're experiencing? And what is experiencing what you're experiencing? So from a Christian point of view, we've obviously got Jesus teaching Lazarus and the rich man. And the parable of Lazarus and the rich man presents to us what I suppose has taken root in Western culture, is this sense of heaven and hell, there being this great divide between them.
Yeah.
And the possibility, at least, that someone might be able to return from the dead with a message of, hey guys, I've discovered what it's all about. So one thing that would be, irrespective of everything else that happens in the film, is literally to ask your kids to look at that passage of the Bible and to say, to basically ask, what would a brush with death do to our lives? What would understanding our own mortality, what impact might that have on the way that we think about life? And in terms of films or stories that have done this far better, A Christmas Carol is obviously one. It's a Wonderful Life is another one.
Which you recently watched with your kids?
I did, and I have to apologise. I have to make a public apology to all our listeners, because when we talked about it on the podcast, I said, "Oh, you'll probably want to wait till you're over 18s for watching It's a Wonderful Life," and you said, "Oh, I think some teenagers could watch it," and my wife said, "Oh, we're going to show the kids It's a Wonderful Life this year," and then I found out that my son had actually watched it last year as well and enjoyed it. So we watched it this year, and they absolutely loved it, to the extent that the next day they brought up a tray of money that they have. It's like a sort of a tray that you'd have inside a cash desk or something. A till. And they said, yeah, we're going to start a building and loans, Morgan Locke Building and Loans. So for every dollar...
It sounds like a building and loans firm, Morgan Locke.
It does, doesn't it? So
who are you with? Oh, we're with Morgan Locke. Yes.
So my apology is that you should watch It's a Wonderful Life with your kids if you haven't already, and don't worry if they don't want to watch the end of it. There's probably more chance they'll want to watch the end of It's a Wonderful Life than they will Soul. In fact, my nephew was watching it. He's 6, I think, and he was watching it with my brother and his wife. And after about 10 minutes, just walked off and started reading a book. And then his younger brother was like, "Oh, I'll go and do that too then." So by the end of it, they didn't really all get through it. So, but It's a Wonderful Life. So therefore, season 3 of Popcorn Parenting is exclusively going to be on live action 1940s black and white films.
Well, we watched on Christmas Eve. We watched White Christmas, which is 1954, which is not. But also, actually, not that different. It was on the BBC. Is Meet Me in St. Louis, which was made in 1944 with Judy Garland and various others, and that is a little bit about making the most of what you have in terms of they're in St. Louis, and it looks like they're going to move to New York, and they don't want to, and eventually they get used to the idea, and then they don't, and then they realise that everything they could have wanted was in St. Louis all along, and. So yeah, there are just loads of movies which kind of do this in a less explanatory way. So yeah, the other Bible passage I wondered that you might go to would be the parable of the talents, which again is like you've been given stuff. Yeah. What are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
And I don't really know what to make of that parable. As I get older, the more I go back to parables, the more I go, I thought I understood this, and I don't think I do.
Yeah.
But
I mean, a couple of other ones just to say would be, it's certainly Philippians is an absolutely brilliant one, particularly the first chapter, where Paul's talking about, it's better for you that I remain in the body. And, for me to live is Christ, to die is gain. So for Joe Gardner, there's absolutely no sense in which dying is gain because I'll miss out on playing jazz.
Yeah.
There's nothing, there could not possibly be anything in the great beyond that's better than playing jazz with Dorothea Williams this evening.
Yeah.
And that is an interesting point. We might want to say, what are we looking forward to that we wouldn't want Jesus to return or to get hit by a bus before that happens? Mm-hmm. And so that would be an interesting passage. Certainly look at Philippians, the first chapter there. The other two key passages, I suppose, we should mention for the kind of topic. One would be related to this idea of how many bits make a person, body, soul, spirit, etc. And to look at Genesis 2 verse 7, where it's basically the creation of Adam. Obviously, that the creation of Eve comes slightly later and is worthy of several podcasts as we would look at that. So Genesis 2 verse 7, and this is where you get what's called the dichotomy, so the two bits approach, body and soul. Then the Lord God formed the man of dust from the ground. So the man of dust from the ground is made physically, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living creature. So you've got this physical bit and this breath of life bit. Then now, at the end of 2:7, Adam is a living creature. So that's often used to say, look, there's the physical bit and there's the spiritual bit, and then together they make up the human being, which I think is basically correct. The difficulty is that breath of life isn't like a technical term to mean, everything else doesn't fit into that, because you get it with the animals that are killed in the flood, everything having the breath of life in it. So there are questions certainly to raise by that. But if you wanted to look at this, a Bible passage to say, what is a person anyway? Yeah. A really good one to go to would be Genesis 2:7. And then the other bit, which I think is important for looking at how Pixar have a gospel, in quote unquote, of creation, where they worship creation, would be to look at Romans chapter 1, and to look at verse 25. This is people, humanity, exchanged the truth about God for a lie and worshipped and served the creature rather than the creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. So once you elevate creation and say, isn't milk brilliant? Or isn't jazz amazing? Pizza's great, isn't it? But you don't carry that line on to say the creator of pizza is even more amazing. That's when you're going to get into all sorts of trouble. And so, because we've all made this mistake, because we all do worship the creature rather than the creator, because we are all sinful, we need a redeemer. We need someone else who's going to be able to come in and rescue us from this body of death. You know, praise be to the Lord, living God, that he's brought Christ into the world at Christmas to do that very thing of rescuing us from our total depravity in both body and soul that we need to be rescued from. So I suppose five passages you mentioned: parable of the talents that you mentioned, the parable of the rich man and Lazarus, Philippians 1 for thinking about the intermediate states, living and dying, Genesis 2:7, and Romans 1:25. So there you go. There's a big Bible study for you to dive into this Zwischen den Jahren.
Either after or instead of watching Pixar's Soul.
Yes.
So, I think we should probably wrap this up there. We will be back with future episodes in 2021, and we're excited to be thinking about those. But until then, thanks very much, Nate Morgan Locke.
Thank you very much, James Cary.
And thanks very much for listening, and a very merry new year to you.
Cheerio!